Hare Krishna. Welcome back to Krunabhavan, some of you, and welcome to Krunabhavan for the first time. It's a nice ringtone. It's quite an amazing badge on that, isn't it? Do we have something on the Vaishnav calendar today? No, so breakfast time. We're okay for breakfast time. It's not one of those things like 7:01 to 7:02 or something. I think we're good. So, just before Bhagavatam class, we read a little from Nectar of Devotion. Some daily practical advice and inspiration from Srila Prabhupada. We don't seem to do it nowadays so much, but I believe perhaps Kishore Prabhu and Sri Kama, or esteemed Prabhupada disciples here today, then I'd rather they were given class, but they're too humble. Plus they have to make, humble. But they could maybe confirm back in earlier days, an active devotion class every evening. And it's amazing how much is in this. Brahmin, who was he was poor Brahmin, and he couldn't afford to offer nice. He'd offer so many things, and one time he offered and Lakshmi says, "Why are you laughing?" And then he recounted the story about his devotee. But it's amazing because I heard that story in an nectar of devotion, it's only like a couple of lines. You think, wow, there's so much condensed nectar in here. So we read from this a little bit every day. And we're on the chapter just now called Qualities of Krishna Further Explained. So there are, how many qualities Krishna has? I thought it was unlimited. Yep, that's the standard. That's a standard question and answer. So he's unlimited in each of those 64 qualities. So he's ever fresh, number 53. Krishna is always remembered and his name is always chanted by millions of devotees, but the devotees never become saturated. Instead of becoming disinterested in the name, the devotees get newer and newer impetus to continue the Navayovanam. Is that the same one you were going to say, Hoksha? Yep. Navayovanam, ever fresh. Yovana means youthful, always youthful. So it's not like you see Krishna for a few million years and think, oh, I'm getting tired of him. We need somebody new. And we're waiting on the new kid on the block showing up. But it's described that when you see Krishna, every time you see him, it's like the first time you've ever seen him. He's ever fresh. Just like the fountain of eternal youth, that is Krishna. All the queens of Dwarka were goddesses of fortune. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 11th chapter, verse 33, that the goddesses of fortune are very fickle and restless. And what's the word for that? She's got Chanchala. Any Gujaratis here? Chanchal Ben. That's Lakshmi Devi, right? And how do you keep Lakshmi from being Chanchal? Worship Krishna. And then Lakshmi is there automatically. But you worship Krishna, then Lakshmi just follows or not. So no one can consistently captivate them. Thus one's luck will always change sometime. Yet the goddess of fortune could not leave Krishna for even a moment when they were residing with him at Dwarka. This means that Krishna's attraction is ever fresh. Regarding Krishna's attractive features being ever fresh, there is a statement by Radharani in the Lalita Madhava in which Krishna is compared to the greatest sculptor because he is expert in chiseling at the chastity of women. In other words, although chaste women may follow the rules and regulations of Vedic principles to become ever faithful to their husbands, Krishna is able to break their stone-like chastity with the chisel of his beauty. Most of the girlfriends of Krishna were married, but because Krishna was their friend before their marriages, they could not forget his attractive features, which were always fascinating to them even after their marriages. And this is where mundane people fall down because they think Krishna is immoral in some way, but they're not understanding that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, all living entities are emanating from him, and everyone are parts and parcels of Krishna, that this is his Leela, this is his pastimes. And then they therefore try to mundane moralize with Krishna, which is what the whole Bhagavad Gita is about, isn't it? Arjuna is saying, "Oh, I can't do this because of that. I can't fight because of that." And Krishna just says, "Mundane morals. Do it because I'm asking, and then everything will be okay. Don't be afraid." Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 15, entitled Instructions for Civilized Human Beings, text number 11. Is it? Yep. Tasmad Daivo Papanena. Tasmad Daivo Papanena. Muni Anenapi Dharmavit Munya Munyanenapi Dharmavit Santushto Ahar Aha Kuryan Santushto Har Aha Kuryan Nitya Naimitiki Kriya Nitya Naimitiki Kriya Tasmad Daivo Papanena Munyane Pidharmavit Santushto Haraha Kuryan Nityanai Mitiki Kriya Tasmad Daivo Papanena Munyane Pidharmavit Santushto Haraha Kuryan Nityanai Mitiki Kriya Tasmad Daivo Papanena Munyane Napidharmavit Santushto Haraha Kuryan Nityanai Mitiki Kriya. Please chant.
Santushto Haraha Guryam Nityanai Mitiki Kriya Tasmad Daivo Papanena
not therefore Lady Uttapanina obtainable very easily by the grace of the Lord. Many Anina is good, prepared in heat, and offered to the Supreme Lord. But one who is actually advanced in religious principles, Santushta, very happily, Aha, Aha, day after day, Kuryat, one should perform, Nityanayamintiki, regular and occasional, Kriya, duties. Translation. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually aware of religious principles and is not heinously envious of poor animals should happily perform daily sacrifices and those for certain occasions with whatever food is available, easily by the grace of the Lord. Please repeat. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually aware of religious principles and is not heinously envious of poor animals should happily perform daily sacrifices and those for certain occasions with whatever food is available. Whatever food is available easily by the grace of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The word Dharmavit, meaning one who knows the actual purpose of religion, is very significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Becoming Krishna conscious is the topmost stage in understanding of religious principles. One who reaches this stage performs the archana process in devotional service. Anyone, whether a grihastha or a sannyasi, can keep small deities of the Lord suitably packed or, if possible, installed, and thus worship the deities of Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan, Lord Jagannath, or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by offering food prepared in ghee and then offering the sanctified prasad to the forefathers, demigods, and other living entities as a matter of routine daily work. All the centers of our Krishna conscious movement have deity worship programs offered to the deity and distributed to the first class Brahmins and Vaishnavas, even to the people in general. This performance of sacrifice brings complete satisfaction. The members of the Krishna consciousness movement engage daily in such transcendental activities. Thus, in our Krishna conscious movement, there is no question at all of killing animals. Om Ajnanatamrindasya Gyananjana Slakaya Chakshunmalitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhakam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Laga Tegrim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shigrim Dinatarnam Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually aware of religious just Prabhupada saying here at the end of the purport, the members of the Krishna conscious movement engage daily in such transcendental activities. And sometimes we may take it for granted if we're eating prasadam, for many years. then we may take it for granted. But if you think, what did you have before you became a devotee? What were you eating for breakfast? Cornflakes and Weetabix, bacon and eggs, slice of toast, or some other unmentionable foodstuffs. Even the simple thing, which is, in the course of one's daily activities, for most materialists, even within the course of one day, they can commit so much ugra karma, horrible, unbeneficial works, meant for the destruction. They perform these things to keep them going for many lifetimes. The Prabhupada said this prasad is our secret weapon, and there's many. I'm sure perhaps some of the devotees have some stories you can share, but just come to mind. I was in Paisley distributing books once, and I stopped this housewife, and she was just a bit bothered because she was going about her business, to be stopped in the middle of the street, somebody wearing a dhoti and trying to sell her a book which she was not interested in the first place. So she said, "No, I'm not interested." I says, "Okay, well, could you just, our cook's made this sweet today and we're trying to get everybody's opinion on it. Could you just sample this and tell me what you think?" So she put some laddu in her mouth, and as soon as she put it in her mouth, she says, "How much is a book?" That is our secret weapon. Sometimes we're thinking, how can I benefit this person, or how can I attract this person to consciousness? Sometimes how can I reduce this person inimical mood? In South Africa, when they were establishing the yatra there, in the meeting with the whatever officials they had to discuss it, and they were trying to establish internet. Devotees were arguing, no, but in every country it's International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We don't care, it's South African. So just after some to and fro arguing, going back and forth, then one devotee brought in a plate of maha, distributed it, and then people says, "Oh, well, okay, International Society of Krishna, why not just let them have it?" So this is Lord Chaitanya. The fire, the fighting fire with water. Well, we might have to wait a while though. Sometimes we have to tolerate, and that's also for purification. At the same time, his message is not a message of non-violence. It's like we we're talking about earlier on, that sometimes people make some mundane moral judgment on Krishna's character. So they said, "Oh, we know everything." You know that statement, "We're knowing everything." This is this Krishna, and immediately they started to go into something, and I thought I'd give them one attempt to try to explain, but they were quite deep-rooted in their envy towards Krishna, and they looked like they were going to try to contaminate me, so I just put my fingers in my ear and started chanting their Singha Pranams, and then they disappeared. So this is a nectar devotion, that if you can't defeat somebody, then you should protect yourself at least. The Ganges wasn't nearby. They say that you should go and take bath in the Ganges, so I just chanted the holy name. That's more cleansing. What's that? The Clyde, yeah. I don't know if I'd have got purified or not. Maybe get another birth. And so it's practical points in this verse that Dave, meaning like we can, like it should be an occasional thing. Like sometimes people think, we shouldn't read Bhagavad Gita. We should just leave it in its wrapper on the altar. It's too sacred to touch. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavad Gita is printed so that it can be distributed indiscriminately. Called it blanket. Any discrimination, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu freely without consideration of high or low. You see that untouchables, because they were all part and parcels of the Lord, they're his parts and parcels. But at the same time, he'd also preached to devotees like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakasananda Saraswati, who were very well established, sannyasis, etc. He wasn't just mixing with the celebrities, or he wasn't just mixing with the 6 Goswamis near Matsuro. They were non-envious, so therefore they could mix with the gentle and with the ruffians, which is just as well for some of us, isn't it? So see every living entity. In some religions, never any of the soul and devotion. And they couldn't make such a statement. It's interesting because when I was brought up in the religious background I was brought up in, they used to talk about that we have a soul. So you'd be wondering, okay, where is it? The first question is, where's the soul? Is it in my head? Is it in my heart? Is it somewhere that I don't see? So basically, it's a bodily conception of life. We are the body, but we have a soul. Whereas Prabhupada just turned that around, spiritual revolution. We are the spirit soul, and we have a body. And so this is a revolutionary concept which really breaks through the ignorance of bodily and mental concepts of life. And oh, sorry, I just escaped that point there. Anyone remember where I was going with that? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, got it. That's what happens when you get older. Or when you get older, at least you can blame your years that you've got a bad memory. When you're younger, you just have to get embarrassed. So this devotee, he was talking about his experience and the history of religion in America, as he knew it, that women didn't have a soul, and even men didn't have a soul until they were a certain age. Like they could say that when you're 21, then you had a soul. So it was quite ridiculous, really. And Prabhupada, he says that, I think it's in the first canto, he says to consider, the head of state are known as the Prajapatis. They're like the guardians of all the subjects, whether it be king, queen, prime minister, president, then they're responsible for the well-being of all the citizens. And it says the animals are also the citizens. To say that the animal has no soul is Satan's philosophy. This is what Prabhupada said. And I had this experience. I was in Cambridge once doing books, and I stopped this chap, and he proclaimed to be a Christian. I said, "Oh, that's good. So you follow the 10 Commandments then?" "Oh, yes. So thou shalt not kill. You follow that one." That same old argument that we've had a million times on the street. It says, "Yes, I don't kill." "Ah, so you're vegetarian?" "No." "These are gifts from God, we can eat." I says, "Okay, but what about the soul? Or the animal doesn't have a soul?" I says, "Well, the animal has children, you've got children. The animal's got a residence, you've got a residence. If the animal cuts, it bleeds, you cut, you bleed. So you have a soul, the animal has a soul." So he agreed with everything up until that part. And then he couldn't agree with it. And it was quite clear to me that he couldn't agree with it because he didn't want to, because it meant that the game was up. As they say, the jig is up. So he would then have to acknowledge that he'd have to make a change. So therefore, it's described that the words of Srimad Bhagavatam are for those who are thoroughly honest with themselves. Sometimes people ask challenging questions, or they ask questions, and the purpose of asking the question is to find out something or to deny something, isn't it? If it's a challenging question. Therefore, tadvidi pranipatena paripshanena sevaya upadikshante te gyanam gyaninas tattvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master, inquire from him submissively. Not that we try to trick him, or we try to trip him up or something like that, to see how intelligent, or like one person asked Prabhupada, how many windows in the Empire State Building? Thinking, he'd catch him out and see if he really knows that. He says, that is not knowledge. Perfect. Prabhupada was never stumped for anything. When you hear Prabhupada's lectures and discourses, his conversations, room conversations, morning walks, stuff like that, you see that he's always, and his name, Abhay Paramaravindan. Abhay means good. So one who is completely out of the Lord, always calls Krishna. So therefore, when we're we should know that pure, and which considers this concept of the living entity being in all species of life. So sometimes people talk about racism, sexism, etc., but what about speciesism, the species? So here also it's been saying that offer food which is easily available. So easily available means we don't have to construct slaughterhouses. We don't have to have such big mechanized industries for farming, etc. He's talking about simple living, high thinking, and within such a statement, the whole these statements. So, of course, the Industrial Revolution that changed the face of the earth for some time. And Prabhupada was talking, it was morning walk, and I think it was Prajapati Prabhu was speaking with Prabhupada. And they were talking about, sometimes the devotees would pose devil's advocate, and sometimes they would just put questions to him. So they're talking about the scientists. Of course, science, everything can be used in Krishna's service. Newton discovered the law of gravity. Should be named after him, or should it be Krishna's law of gravity, or Balaram's law of gravity? But he gets the credit somehow. Krishna let him take it. He's not attached. But the devotee was saying that the scientists are cheating people with these philosophies that life comes from matter. And he says they've been cheating since time immemorial. And Prabhupada says, no, not time immemorial. Only the last 200 years, and soon it will be finished. As the scientists increase even in their mundane knowledge, it becomes even more ridiculous to sustain their argument. As they discover, so for example, when in the 19th century, when Darwin was propagating his theory of evolution, then their understanding of one cell with the implements they had in those days was very limited. It was just like a little homogeneous blob. But now they understand that it's got so much intricate arrangement there, so much mechanism that it cannot, each part is interdependent. It's like if you have a car engine and one part breaks from it, then the car doesn't work, does it? So if you if you've got a car and the cam shaft goes, or the timing belt goes, your car is done until you get that one part fixed. Or you can't make a car and just leave one part out. it's useless. It's not going to function. So each part of the cell is interdependent. So many scientists who are honest, they come up with this term intelligent design. But those who insist on using the scissors to cut the cloth, you know the story, right? Two men arguing which is the best way to cut the cloth, the knife or the scissors. One says knife is better way. No, scissors is better. And then they start fighting, and then this fight goes on to the street, and then they fall into the Ganges, and the one the person who says the knife is best, he's being pushed under the water and he's drowning, and this is the water here. So just as his last desperate act of defiance, he puts his hand up. No, he says, scissors actually. The one with the knife is drowning him, and he just does this. So this is sometimes how people can be so stubborn, and as Prabhupada say, puffed up. They're proud. They can't just admit, okay, I was wrong. Why be wrong? You've been wrong 50 years. Why be wrong another 20? You can be right now. But they insist on being right even when they're wrong. And sometimes they'll create language to just perpetuate the situation. So they were going on about the different steps of evolution, and they were looking for the missing link. And there was a few false alarms come up where people had made samples of the missing link, like the Piltdown man and the Java man. These were different things which were discovered, and they were presented as being the missing links. And then it was understood that they had pieced a few things together and faked the whole thing. So then, after much searching around to find the missing link, rather than think, okay, maybe there isn't a missing link, maybe the species are surviving, existing simultaneously. I remember as a child, even in primary school, in one class we were being taught religious education, another class we were being taught, evolution. I said, okay, so if we come from monkeys, why is there still monkeys? And, I don't know, maybe they didn't evolve. All right, so why did some evolve and some didn't? So even the child can ask the intelligent questions. There's a wonderful book called Life Comes from Life. Srila Prabhupada and Swarup Damodar Maharaj, they discuss these things. So devotees, when they're preaching, they shouldn't be afraid to tackle these things. It's not that we have to get a degree on it. Some devotees do, because it gives them some credibility for preaching in these scientific circles. But devotees should understand that even common sense arguments can prevail. So, because they couldn't find the missing link, then they find a new term called punctuated equilibrium. Oh, that sounds like a big word. I don't understand that. They must be right. So let's just create a language that people don't understand, and we pose as being the Brahmins of society. And then people speak about this. Sometimes you hear on the radio, and they just speak about it as if it's a fact, but it's still a theory. It's not been proven. Very interesting and humorous pastime. At the end of this book, Life Comes from Life, then I think it was Hamsadutta Prabhu, he was challenging this, was he a Sri Lankan philosopher or scientist? I think he was. And he was putting forward these scientific arguments. And Hamsadutta says, okay, well, and it was being printed in the newspaper, and Hamsadutta was challenging this man's scientific theories. And he says, okay, then please demonstrate your theory. And so the newspaper, they were enjoying this back and forward argument between the two of them. And he said, okay, we'll hire a hall, and on this date, please show up and demonstrate how life comes from matter. So he didn't show up. But if you read that, then it's quite interesting, because people, they may be intelligent materially, but maya pritagyana, the knowledge is stolen by illusion. Whereas even the devotee, they might not be so materially intelligent, but if they're a devotee, then they're more intelligent. Because the type of intelligence means a tato brahma jigyasa, that now we have this human form of life is meant for self-realization. It's not simply meant for advancing materially. So everybody has their own individual karma. It's not that if we have good karma and wealth is going to come to us that we say, no, I won't take it. We can take it and use it in Krishna service, whatever we have. It's all relative anyway, isn't it? And plus, whether we have a little or a lot, it all belongs to Krishna anyway. If we use it in Krishna, then we can become free from that illusion. So here, a simple thing is that we offer on a daily basis, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yomi Bhakti Prayachite Tadam Bhakti Partam Asnami Prayatat Manaha. We'll offer with love and devotion leaf, fruit, flower, water. So the word bhakti is used twice in this sloka because the bhakti is the main ingredient. Sometimes we have volunteers come to stay here to work on the farm, and they're not necessarily interested in Krishna consciousness. Some of them take up some interest, and they love the food stuff here. And then when they go away, they say, oh, can you give me the recipe for that khichdi? And say, yes, okay. And then sometime later we see them say, I've tried making that, but it's just never the same. And we say, oh, we forgot to give you the other ingredient. What's that? LND, love and devotion. And so this is really the thing that whatever we do, if we do it as an offering to Krishna, all that you do, all that you give away, everything should be done as an offering to Krishna. And then Yogi Vai Vishnu, it frees us from bondage, otherwise karma bandhana. So therefore a devotee only eats that which can be offered to Krishna. Even being vegetarian isn't enough. Prabhupada said in the Ishopanishad that even the pigeons are vegetarian. Not so much the pigeons you see in some of the cities though. They'll just eat whatever they can get. They've got themselves a bit of a reputation as being flying rats now, isn't it? But typically, we see lots of pigeons around here. They're quite fortunate living entities living in the deity's domain. But there's many animals that are vegetarians. So being a vegetarian itself is not a big thing. But for sometimes for people who are very attached to eating meat, then it's a big thing. And certainly it will be a big thing when they get the reaction. So we should be very careful to not transgress these laws of nature. And we can try to encourage others. The Prabhupada said that one cannot understand the first thing about spiritual life unless one becomes a vegetarian. Because to understand the first thing about spiritual life is, I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul, which means all the other living entities are also not the body, they're spirit soul, regardless of whatever species they're in. And Krishna consciousness is unique in that way, that it declares that all living entities moving and non-moving are equal spiritual beings. Some time ago, Gandhi tried to establish something called Harijan, right? Do away with the caste system, Harijan, but it wasn't based on the real spiritual essence. So you can't rubber stamp Harijan. Harijan has to be on the spiritual platform where everybody is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So still one continue in one's duty, regardless, but just offering everything to Krishna, whether one is in the so-called lower or higher class. So that statement Prabhupada mentioned about the animals, in the first canto, he said, should the animals be, everyone's wanting peace in the world, but should the animals be exempt from this peace? Are they not to be included as well? So therefore, this is a very important thing. But regardless, it's not necessarily we have to wait till everyone becomes a vegetarian before we can preach to them. The devotees go on the street and they do Harinam. They take the holy name out to everybody without considering who they are, without considering where the place is. And they undertake great difficulties in doing this. And sometimes preaching is not so difficult, and sometimes there's some austerity there. Like perhaps we decide we're going in Harinam today, And then we see it's raining, we think, oh, do we go in Harinam or not? Yeah, people will still be on the street. Why not? I remember I was in South Africa once, and devotees were getting ready to go in Sanktan, and then the rain came on, and they just went back into the rooms. And I thought, well, if that would happen in Scotland, we'd never get any Sankirtan done. There was one time where Prabhupada was sick, and Hari Saur Prabhu recalls this instance where Prabhupada was due to go to some preaching program, but he wasn't well, and the devotees were trying to convince him, don't go, we can send someone else. And he says, no, I want to go. He says, oh, Prabhupada, why you have to go? We can send somebody else. And then Hari Saur Prabhu tried to insist, and then Prabhupada said, that's enough. And he said, when Prabhupada said that, he understood, don't go any further. And then after a while, he says, but Prabhupada, it's so austere for you. He said, it'll be so austere. He says, preaching means austerity. But sometimes we go preaching, it's austere. Maybe you have to put up with some discomfort in traveling or in the environment or certain people, or you wanted to do something else, but you committed to something or whatever difficulty may be there, or you've committed to something, but you're not feeling so well that day, and there's no one to take your place, and you have to go and do it anyway. But other times you go, and it's nectar. The kirtan's great, the prasadam's great, the classes, the questions and answers, and it's fine. Or you go into Harinam, and it's just like the spiritual world out there. But it doesn't matter, whether we're feeling the bliss or whether we're not. Then it's a duty, isn't it? This is what Bhagavad Gita is all about: is do our duty regardless. And this is how we show our love for Krishna. This is how we show our love for Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters, that we do our duty. And this way, we're not just a fair weather friend of Krishna. You sometimes you get that. Somebody's, like, say somebody wins the lottery, and then suddenly they've got so many friends. And but then where were they when they were struggling some other time? Or you go through some difficulty and you see who your real friends are. Sometimes your friends will stick with you, your true friends will stick with you, and other ones, they may keep a distance, or they may change to another side or something. But Krishna's our eternal friend. He's always with us. He never gives up on us. Even though we're so envious at times, we're in the material world, not because we're innocent. I remember there's one devotee, Harikesh. He was preaching, and someone went on about some innocent people, and he said, in the material world, nobody's innocent. He said, you're in the material world, that means you're guilty. Because we're here not because we're necessarily pure devotee, unless somebody's here specifically on a mission from the Lord, but because we wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna. So now Krishna has given us a way to come back. Just offer everything to me, remember me, and you'll come to me. Simple as that. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. If we think of Krishna at the time of death, that's where we go. But if we remain attached to other things separate from Krishna, then that's where we go. Just like the other day, I went for a swim in the sea, and the very next day I read this quote that Prabhupada said, sometimes people like to go and swim like a fish. And he says, so Krishna says, why like a fish? Why not become a fish? He says, this is Krishna's mercy. You want to swim in the sea like a fish, then become a fish. I was thinking, I'm just trying to get healthy again. But I thought, this is good, because then don't become too attached to this. Don't make a big thing about it. Don't let it become a distraction. So whatever we're doing, we do it in some kind of moderation, and it should be done simply for the purpose of maintaining body, mind, and soul, so that we can continue to do our service. We continue with our Krishna consciousness. Don't become distracted by anything. Whatever we engage in, it should be simply with the mind of enabling us to do our service better, or to continue or maintain somewhat. So that is Krishna's mercy, that if we want to be something, he'll say, okay, that's what you want, there you go. In Buddhism, they say, be careful what you want, because you might get it. Jesus Christ also said, seek and you shall find. So depending on what you're seeking, that's what you'll find, isn't it? So on the subject as well of animal slaughter or offering, and even the Bible that was saying, because they say in the Vedic sacrifice they used to do Ashwamedha yajnas, etc., and they would rejuvenate the animal, etc. This was meant for previous ages, but they cannot do this now because nobody knows the mantras. And we see in the Bhagavatam that someone once chanted a mantra wrong, they got one vowel wrong, and it wasn't something auspicious, it was a demon that appeared, wasn't it? Who was that one? Was it Vritrasura? Simply because somebody got it wrong. And they would have, generally would have an umpire who'd be listening carefully to see if a mantra was wrong. If they got it wrong, they'd stop and start all again. So we just don't have the attention span for that. You know, we can hardly remember where we put our toothbrush, and we use it every morning. You know, so what chance have we got of chanting these mantras perfectly? And if we have to do these big yajnas and start again every time we get one vowel or consonant wrong, go back to the beginning, we wouldn't have enough lifespan for that. So Harinam Sankirtan Yajna, that's the sacrifice in this age. There's remnants of the previous ages, meditation, temple worship, yajnas, but we don't put so much emphasis on them. The Sankirtan mission of the holy name. And this is where it's described that Lord Chaitanya is taking the lowest to the highest. If you ever go to Radhakund, you'll see one big deity of Lord Chaitanya there, and he's standing like this. He's come to take the lowest to the highest place. So this is called causeless mercy. We haven't done anything to deserve it, so we should always remember where we came from. And when we see people out there, then we see there go I, but by the grace of God. Remember where we came from, and just always be careful to follow in the footsteps, Mahajana Yena Gatasa Panta, of the previous acharyas, so we don't slip and go back to where we came from. We see that when people give up Krishna consciousness to go back to what they knew before, it's almost as if time stops. You may have been in for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, but if you give it up, you go back to where you left off. So Mangalananda Prabhu, he wrote a nice song, which is very good. It's one of the first Krishna conscious songs I heard. It was through the kingdom of all species you have risen, spirit soul. Don't turn back now, hear the sages, it's time to reach the goal, which is going back to Godhead. So in this path of Krishna consciousness, and even in life, sometimes you think it's difficult to carry on, but you carry on anyway. When you think you can't go on, you go on and just keep going on. Because everything, happiness and distress comes and goes. And one of the first lessons Krishna gives us is tamsta tikshashva, isn't it? To tolerate like winter, summer seasons. When we're going through some situation, if we're happy, sometimes we never really consider, oh, this might not last forever. We're just happy to enjoy it. If we're going through some difficult situation, we forget how happy we were. Like in the middle of winter, we forget how nice it was in the summer. And in the middle of summer, we forget how difficult it was in the winter. Therefore, Krishna uses that perfect example. Just try to tolerate as we see the passing of winter, summer seasons. It's simply sense perception. You know, we exist throughout that, and the changing seasons come and go. So the happiness and stress comes and go. But if we're steady in our Krishna consciousness, every day we only offer Krishna foodstuffs. We chant our rounds every day. Chant 16 rounds. If you're not chanting 16, then make a plan to come to that. Chant one a day at least every day. Don't go below that. And then put a date on your calendar where you're going to start chanting 2 a day. And then when you're going to double that and double it. Because the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. when the mind is conditioned, it's not your best friend. So we have to use the intelligence to plan how we're going to improve on our Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we have to lead the mind and not be led by the mind. So the devotees, they totally avoid heinous activities. And Srila Prabhupada has very kindly given us the processes of archana, where we can offer foods to the deities. And if we have deities at the temple, then we don't have to have, and we live next to the temple, then we make the temple deities our focus. We don't have to have like 5,000 temples in Leicester. Nobody goes to see the temple or serve the deities there. And we come together to the one temple. And but if you live far from the temple, or you don't get to the temple often, you can have deities there, or you can have simple Gaurnitai deities or Panchatattva picture. But at home, we should always offer everything to Krishna. Not that we only take prasad when we come to the temple. And see, particularly amongst devotee and amongst the Indian community, they have such high respect for prasad. When they go to the temple, they just want Tora Tora, Mahaprasad, isn't it? Because they've got so much respect for it. But better than Tora Tora is Bara Bara. We can have big. Why just Tora Tora? Why just not the whole time? So the more Krishna comes into our life, the more Maya goes, and then the stronger we come. So whenever we're feeling a bit weak in our spiritual life, then increasing our hearing and chanting. And if you have to, increase on your prasad as well. If you have to comfort, eat, make sure it's prasad. And always keep good association with devotees. We'll just stop there. Is anyone any comments or questions? Okay. We'll just stop there and we can take prasad. Sorry, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
I've got a question for the hunters goes out and kill the animal to provide the food for the family.
Yeah.
So is it like authorized the people who, like Jamaica, some people believe that, okay, if I don't have is it all right to eat animals? I'm providing for my family. So how the consciousness, when the animal cry, when they kill, do the consciousness they do take at the same time? How they get affected, to that personally, and do they make a choice that I don't have any grains or plant diet, so it's all right to eat, kill the animal and allowed to eat?
Well, that might be a very rare person on this planet nowadays. When Prabhupada spoke with Cardinal Danilou on French TV, then he said, "Oh, you're head of the Catholic Church in France." He says, "In your Bible, it says, 'Thou shalt not kill.' Why are you killing?" He says, "Oh, we're not killing." He says, "But you're killing the cow. The cow's your mother, gives you milk, isn't it?" Yes. So why are you killing? He says, "Oh, but the poor children, they have to eat." Prabhupada wasn't accepting that. They don't have to kill the cow. You can use the same piece of land to grow grain, or you can take the cow and take the milk and the ghee. So we don't have to kill the cow. But sometimes people will say, "Oh, I have to feed my family," as they're walking past the fruit and veg rack to go to the meat counter. So that kind of excuse, try and tell that to the Yamadutas, but it's not going to work. But occasionally maybe some Aboriginal people there who do like that. But even if they're living in the forest, sages used to go to the forest, didn't they? And they would live on roots and fruits. So I think it would be kind of hard pushed for someone to say that was the case. But in any case, if there was absolutely nothing and they had to eat to survive, then that would be a different matter. But I think that's going to be extremely rare. But sometimes people do use this. We have to give our kids protein. So the elephant, that's one of the strongest animals there is. That doesn't require to go and eat meat, does it? And there's a little book we have, The Higher Taste. There's things in there, little sections there, give different reasons for being vegetarian. And one is listed various athletes of the day, athletes, wrestlers, boxers, etc., who were vegetarian. And Prabhupada says that the civilized way to get all the necessary animal fats we need is by taking ghee, not by slaughtering the animals. So I don't think you've come across too many people who'd be able to say that, and if they do, then I think it's easy enough to direct them to say, well, there's so much available now. And nowadays, particularly the UK and Europe and even India as well, we're seeing that everything's labelled vegetarian, isn't it? A few decades ago, you had to really search to see what was the ingredients and things. So is that okay, bro? Anything
Okay.
else? No. Okay. Iskon Govinda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shishi Kodnitai Mahaprashashi ki, Lester Yatra ki, Tagore Premanandi.
Haribo. Is Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki.